What's actually coming up is what feels like a piece of encouragement, perhaps, for those who are having a tricky time right now. This year has been a time of shedding and letting go. And in fact, only a couple of weeks ago, I had an extremely visceral dream of peeling the skin off of my body. If anything has not been released or let go of earlier in the year, it's kind of all finishing up right now. And so if you are feeling very heavy and dense, perhaps just unmotivated and very fatigued, then I want to encourage you that that time is going to come to an end. You're not alone in that. With all that shedding, if you go into it, there are these moments of profound clarity that are like lightning strikes of clarity. It kind of makes the whole storm much more worthwhile because it lights everything. This is a year of strengthening the physical body, a significant need to strengthen the physical body. And in that strengthening of the physical body, there must also be an understanding of the strengthening of the other bodies, the emotional body and the mental body. The soul does not scream. The soul whispers. The soul nudges. So when we allow ourselves to move into a more beautiful and orderly way of being, magic naturally unfolds. We do not need drama and light shows for that to happen.
Welcome everybody to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. Today is an amazing day because we have our new friend Aluna with us, who came highly recommended from our Heart Coherence Collaborative, not just once, but many times. And some of our biggest fans, Katie Kiss specifically, has said you have to interview Aluna. So Katie, thank you. And Aluna, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, when Aluna and I were talking today about our intentions for this podcast specifically, Aluna said she wanted to share from the deepest parts of her heart. And something about that really illuminated my energy field because I love hearing somebody wanting to go deep. So let's just start off with, what does your heart, the deepest parts of your heart, want to share in this moment?
I like this opening. What's actually coming up is what feels like a piece of encouragement, perhaps, for those who are having a tricky time right now. This year has been a time of shedding and letting go. And in fact, only a couple of weeks ago, I had a extremely visceral dream of peeling the skin off of my body, which I had never had such a dream. And what I have come to realize is that this ending time of this year, for basically since autumn to the very end of this calendar year, is a time when if anything has not been released or let go of earlier in the year, it's kind of all finishing up right now. And so if you are feeling very heavy and dense, or if you are feeling perhaps just unmotivated and very fatigued, then I want to encourage you that that time is going to come to an end. And if you go into whatever is coming up for you very deeply right now, you're going to be able to start the new year off with a little bit more energy. There will still be some fatigue. I can just sense that, but you will be able to pick up speed a little bit more quickly if you go into it all right now. And so if you're feeling maybe lost or a little dense in what you're going through, you're not alone in that. And that is actually what is coming up for me to share first. Yeah. I'm with you.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's what I think the biggest message is right now for the community, is that we are with you, you know, because I have gone through exactly that shedding, and it can be tough. It can be so intense, and I don't think anybody's like, you know, I guess immune to it. We're all kind of have our stuff that's coming up to be shed. So if anybody's really struggling, comment below, and, you know, we'll love you up. We'll wrap you up in a big hug. Yeah.
And what I want to say too is that with all that shedding, there are these moments of, if you go into it, there are these moments of profound clarity that are like lightning strikes of clarity, that it kind of makes the whole storm much more worthwhile because it lights everything up. So
yes, I've had those moments too. So I would love to just learn a little bit more about you, because one of the things that I always say, and I know it's kind of crazy, but I don't do any research even if somebody recommends somebody 1,000 times, because I like to learn live about somebody. I don't like to have like information or the internet taint what I learned from you. So I'd love to learn about your journey and who you are, because you are many things, one being a channel, one just being this amazing spiritual leader. But how did you get to this point?
Well, going all the way back to the beginning, as a very young child, around 3 years old, is when I started to have these nighttime visits. It's funny, I don't tell this story very often, and for some reason it makes me nervous. I started having these nighttime visits as a very young child, and it continued throughout my entire childhood up until just before I was reaching adolescence, around 12. And these unseen beings, just these voices and these energies, would guide me every night. And for years, I did the same exact thing. I mean, it was unchanging what I was doing, particularly as a younger child. And then things started to become more complex. And so the primary piece that they would always have me start with, what my initial schooling at nighttime started with, and then what became more complex, was letting go of my mind and disappearing into a black void. That was the teaching. And I loved going to sleep every night. I have a twin brother, and I was always in bed before him because I loved this part of my life. And there was never a part of me that questioned it, that thought it was strange. It felt totally normal to me. And I also knew that I really couldn't talk about it, not necessarily because my family would have rejected me, but they also would not have understood entirely. And so every night I would be trained and learned how to, I guess, meditate, we could say, in a very, very deep way of going into the void and letting go of everything that I thought I was as a child at that time, and let my mind go. And then, as I said, the teachings became more complex. And so eventually, around the age of 9 or so, is when these teachings started to include a much more focused approach of focusing on my pineal gland, which is not the word they used. And they also did not call it a third eye. They just directed my attention to a part inside of my brain. That was it. So it was just a kind of orienting, if like a camera, moving my attention to this place on the inside of my brain. Didn't know what it was, but they brought my energy there and then taught me how to adjust the energy within that space, which I now know is my pineal gland, so that I can pick up on different frequencies. And so in the beginning, it started out with them having me tune to radio stations on Earth. And I still remember the first time that I actually was able to pull it off, and I heard a song in my head, and it actually jolted me out of the experience because it was very loud, and very strange to have a song playing inside your head. And I still remember the song, actually. I'm pretty sure it's by Madonna. Anyway, so that was interesting. And then it got a little weirder for me again as a child, because they ended up having me tune into other kind of more complex frequencies, which included like police radio frequencies and trucker radio frequencies. And I didn't know what I was hearing as a child. I didn't know that the police had a radio frequency or that truckers did. It wasn't until I was older that I finally realized, that's what I was hearing in my head. Anyway, so that was all the Earth frequencies. And then the thing that became more complex after that, which I loved much more, were the frequencies of things not on Earth. So being able to tune into an energetic frequency instead of a radio frequency became a little more complex. And so that is how I was trained to be able to listen to so many different types of beings. And so I am able to tune into the Akashic Records, and I do call myself an Akashic channeler because it kind of encapsulates a lot of things. But I can tune into a lot, and really my biggest focus, and the thing that is the nearest and dearest to me and my heart is helping people to learn and get back in touch with the language of their heart, to learn how to listen to that. And a lot of people in this world, they need something to believe in. And so I understand that the gifts that I have they seem so magical and otherworldly. In fact, they are very normal, and all of humanity has this ability. Everybody does, and everyone will again. These are just latent systems that happen to be activated within me at a younger age. That is it. There is nothing more special about me. There is no special, magical, chosen thing about me. It just so happens that I learned how to ride my bike earlier than you. That's it. That's the only difference. And so my focus is really on helping people to come back to what is the most important. And if what people need is to hear about the importance of their heart from a being that they can't see, then that's beautiful. I'm here for that. And it's a gift and a blessing for me to be able to feel the energies of so many types of beings, from what we would call extraterrestrials to angels to saints and ascended masters. It's a gift, and it's a blessing to be able to share that with other people. So that is how a little that I got to where I am now, and that's really my focus at this time.
Yeah, I love how you said riding a bike, because it's funny, like most kids were learning how to ride a bike and you're in this training with, with them. And so I just want to start by asking, who is they? Do you know who it was, like specifically from an entity perspective, that was with you at that time?
They are Syrian beings, and also Arcturian beings. Those were the two, and then my Pleiadian guides played a role with me on a more personal level, and also supported my training. It really moved between those three groups, which is why sometimes I would hear the voices, and other times the messages would be considered telepathic, where they were just energetic communications. Yeah.
Now, how did you relate this information to your external environment? Did you talk to your family, friends about what was happening to you at this time? And did you have their support, or did you keep it kind of quiet?
I never spoke to my friends about it at all. And I wasn't really interested in that, because I loved school. So I just wanted to talk about school when I was at school. Yeah. And with my mother, who is who I grew up with, she was open to various things. But as a young child, I just knew that it was not her time to know what I was going through. And I was very aware of my past life connection to her and my father. And I knew that it was not the time to share with her. And so the experiences that I was able to share with her occasionally were the experiences that I would have with those who had already passed on, who were stuck, souls that were stuck between the living world and moving on to enter into their next life. That was prolific for me as a child, and thankfully I was not afraid. Though those were some of the experiences I could share with her, but other than that, the couple of times that I would try to share about prophetic dreams that I had, it was I tended to be kind of shut down and made fun of, and these questions would be asked of, well, what happens in this part? For example, there was one time when I tried to share with a friend, and then I never did again, where she was reading a book series called Cirque du Freak. It was so popular in my school at the time. And I told her one day, I said, I had a dream last night that actually one day they're going to make a movie out of that book. And she started to say, I don't believe you. And I said, no, it will happen. It'll be a few years, but they will make a movie out of that book. And she said, well, what happens here and here? And so I started to explain. And then she said, and does this part happen? And I said, no, it doesn't. And she said, well, I don't believe you, because that part happens in the book. So I was shut down after that. And they did actually make a movie. It was many, many years later, but they did make a movie called Cirque du Freak. And so I didn't share after that. I realized it's not necessary. This information is for me. It doesn't really matter for anyone else. And I kind of halted, which is why I actually still feel, even today, a little bit nervous talking about my story, which is kind of ridiculous.
No, it's not ridiculous, because what I'm realizing is through all the people I'm interviewing and even myself, it's like I shut down at a young age because I remember, like, having things that I thought were in my closet, or there were energies around, and I started explaining this to people in my life and they told me I was crazy. And so I just shut down. So I'm now starting to learn how to come back to that. And it is kind of like a nervous, interesting energy. So, yeah, good on you for being courageous enough to keep going, even when people might have not supported you. So it's really cool that you kind of worked your way through that, and you are where you're at now,
Thank you.
Now, I would love to hear a little bit more about the Akashic Records channeling, because even though I've interviewed a lot of people, I haven't really had too many people talk about the Akashic Records or have specifically an ability to access them. Maybe they have, they just haven't mentioned it. So I'd love to hear when you started realizing you were going there. How do you work with the Akashic Records? All things Akashic Records.
Beautiful. I love this topic.
Yeah.
So the Akashic Records, also sometimes called the Akashic Library, it is, to be very accurate, it is a frequency in the quantum field. Just to be very plain and simple, that's all it is. And so when someone, and the quantum field is the void. So if someone has practice tuning into the void, then they have practice tuning into different frequencies within that void, and you can access the Akashic Records. That's why anybody can access the Akashic Records. It is simply a matter of training your brain to be able to tune into a frequency that you cannot see, taste, touch, or experience with your material senses. So because I had all of that practice as a child, it was very natural for me to be able to tune into the Akashic Records when I got older. And it was truly just an experience of curiosity. For the first time that I ever accessed it, I received my one and only Akashic reading from a beautiful being named Debbie Solaris. And after that, maybe a few months or so, I'm not sure, I just asked my guides, I said, am I able to tune into the Akashic Records? And they said, yes, you are. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to experiment and kind of play around. And so I did. And as soon as I started tuning in, I could see everything. And I had to, because I am self-taught in that way, I had to work through some layers of what happens when you're working with somebody else's energy fields, which was quite interesting and very informative for me, in order to get to the actual accurate information. And the reason why tuning into the Akashic Records can be so incredible is for a couple of reasons. I will say I am a double Capricorn, and a double Capricorn.
Oh, double. What does that mean? A double Capricorn?
So I was born on a new moon. So my sun and moon are both in Capricorn.
Oh, wow.
And
nice.
So for those of you who know Capricorns, very work-oriented, very practical. And so I will not do something that has no meaning. So the tuning into the Akashic Records, I really had to understand, if there's no purpose to this, if this is just for the sake of kind of messing around in some mystical realm, I'm not interested. That's what I said again and again to my guides. And so I've had to learn over these last few years of doing this, what is the purpose and how does it actually support someone? The reason why it is helpful to tune into the Akashic Records, whether you're looking into your own Akashic Records or looking into someone else's or getting your records read to you, is because there are aspects of the self that are anchored in those timelines that need to be witnessed so that that energy can be released. And it really can be that simple of an experience, that the witnessing of whatever was happening in this moment that part of you is still stuck in allows it to be let go of. There's, instead of needing to go through, let's say, a whole ceremony where you're doing a cord cutting and releasing something, that sometimes people do that, and that is what supports them. But there are other times when it is as simple as being witnessed. And when there is a loving observer on the other side, witnessing that fragment of your soul, and then you are receiving the information and receiving the witnessing in this current time and place with this point of consciousness, that can just be resolved. So looking into the Akashic Records is quite incredible. It can also be disorienting because you can see everything. And the biggest piece about that, again, I'll bring it back to my own training, the activation of this latent system, the pineal gland, is what allows one to do that, along with the training of the mind to be able to stay focused on the frequency of the Akashic Records. So just like how we can tune into any frequency or energy or emotion, we can tune into the Akashic Records. And then when we get in there, the pineal gland, which allows us to move backwards and forwards in time from this point of consciousness, the pineal gland allows us to experience the breadth of someone's timeline. And then, beyond that, based on your own psychic gifts and the tendencies that you have, you will read the records accordingly. So, for example, I am able to see, hear, and energetically feel what is happening for a person, which can be a little overstimulating. And I had to really practice honing that in the beginning. It was rather overwhelming to experience someone's emotions in real time of perhaps the grief of losing someone in this memory that I'm seeing. I had to practice honing that. And so now I am able to kind of have a step back, and I can observe all of it and hear everything. It's like I'm seeing a movie a little bit. It's a little bit like that in my mind. And based on all of that, I ask the person's higher self what is in the highest alignment for them to know at this time. Because again, when you're looking at a soul's experience of incarnation, you're going to see a lot there. I mean, it's an infinite amount of time that you can look at. And so if you're just going in there and kind of poking around, you can see anything. And what I've learned over the years, again, after just working with clients many times, is understanding, oh, actually, I need to go in with the intention of what is the information that will most highly serve this person at this time, and ask for that to be given and come through. And then there are energy releases that happen from that, and therefore karmic ties that are able to be released as well. So that the purpose being, with all of that release, that the person's point of consciousness that they are currently in, it becomes a more integrated whole. That is the purpose. When we have all of these fragmented pieces, they are anchoring us in these past moments, including just this current lifetime. If we have not overcome some type of trauma or emotional reaction, if we are still reacting emotionally to a certain type of person, to a certain experience, that is an indication that we have an anchor somewhere in our lifetime around that type of person or that type of experience. And that's going to hold us back from being a fully integrated person, which means we are not able to serve our soul. And as I mentioned, that is my biggest interest, is helping people to allow their personality that they are to start being in full service to the soul, which means coming in touch with the fullness of the heart and the center of the heart. So sometimes for some people, getting an Akashic reading can allow them to do that, can bring them closer to that service of the soul, because they are closer to their heart. They are not having so many anchors in these past aspects of self.
Our mission here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative is to get people in touch with the healing power of the heart.
And we really need your help. Right now, only 1% of viewers subscribe. We are aiming to take that number to 6%.
The reason why we want to do that is the more people that subscribe, the more people in the world can learn the magical practice of heart coherence.
So please help us out. If you ever listened, if you love this message, please just take a moment to subscribe.
Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you.
Oh, I love this so much. Now, Would you say you've noticed anything in regards to trauma and people's memories? Because I think back to some of my, trauma, and I think because of what happened, my brain like will not even allow me to go there. So I'm just thinking in regards to why it would be specifically helpful to have somebody who could access the Akashic records, because maybe our memory sometimes won't let us go to places based off the trauma. And as a result, we can't really move on from it.
Yes, so that's an excellent question. That is part of the reason why looking at the Akashic records, and again, a person's higher self will bring through whatever lifetime is the most helpful and relevant to them. So, if you have experienced a trauma in this current lifetime, the odds are high that you have experienced a similar trauma in a previous lifetime. It's not always the case, but it is very likely that that is true. So, if in this current lifetime, you as a person, as a personality, and as a point of consciousness are unable to access that memory, then looking at your Akashic records to see what can come through there and revisiting that same trauma, witnessing that trauma, and releasing the energy from that trauma can allow the trauma that you experienced in this current lifetime to also be released, and or to make it more easily accessible. If you need to witness it from this lifetime, then you will be able to access those memories.
That makes sense. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about you as a channel. Is it the Syrians and the Arcturians that are coming through you now? Like, how has your relationship with channeling evolved since that time at 9 years old?
Yeah. Well, channeling to me is there kind of a broad definition there. Right. I'm an Akashic channeler because I'm tuning into something that cannot be experienced with the senses and then bringing that information through. There's no way to validate that information. That's more like a channeler using the non-senses. And how it has evolved is really that I am now able to allow beings to come through me, which I always said I would never do that. I always said that. And then it was at the very beginning of my time of going online, which I guess was last year, which seems crazy, but last year.
Yeah.
Thank you. When that started, there was a being that came through that I had zero experience or understanding of that called herself Lilith, very strong feminine energy. And she essentially approached me and said, I'm going to share a message. And I said, okay. And I prepared to interpret her message and then share it as I had been doing. And she said, no, I don't need anybody to speak for me. And I kind of thought, that's exactly how I would feel. And so I allowed her to speak through me, which is I had never done before. And it was because of the way she said it that I thought that's exactly how I would feel. And so my experience has changed a lot because feeling an energy enter you and allowing this information to pass through my consciousness and being able to the experience of actively channeling is very interesting. And so it has really widened my perspective of what is possible because I myself have experienced it. I didn't know what to think before that. I didn't know what it was like to see another being speaking through someone. What is it like to be that person? I didn't know I would experience that. But now I have. And my guides have expressed how there are certain energies that are meant to come through my voice. And then there are certain energies that are meant to come through their own energetic way. And as I have become more attuned and my own internal nervous system and my own energy body has become more attuned to these various energies and frequencies, they ask me less often to pull my consciousness back. And more often, they are encouraging me to interpret the messages for the listeners. And it's been when that very first started happening, I couldn't understand why. I was confused by it. And then I now, as I have continued to unfold and just evolve, I have come to understand it is because the complexity of the messages that they are sharing has increased. And the way that they shared that information with me is again more telepathic and energetic. And that means if there is not a human interpreter to bring through the words and the frequencies, it can be difficult for people to interpret and understand the messages. And so they have been asking me more and more to receive the messages and interpret it in real time, which is quite challenging, I will say, to maintain a coherent thought and simultaneously receive one message while giving out what has just been received and still receiving the next one, if you follow what I'm saying. Yeah. So my level of consciousness and the way that my brain works has certainly changed over time since starting this channeling.
Yeah. Oh, that's so impressive. I'm like somebody that, like, if I'm cooking an egg, I can only focus on cooking that egg. So I'm like, not now, Leah, I'm trying to cook an egg, like, whereas you're doing all these different things at one time. That's so impressive. I'm curious if there's any specific messages that have been coming through stronger, like in this day and time. Is there anything that you're receiving that you think we should know about?
So very specifically, I will say, this has been a message for really this whole year. The energy of strength in all forms. So I started the year with receiving that this is a year of strengthening the physical body, most certainly. And that is still true. There is a significant need to strengthen the physical body. And in that strengthening of the physical body, there must also be an understanding of the strengthening of the other bodies that I speak of, the emotional body and the mental body. We are overdue for a focus on strength. There has been a lot of discussion and understanding around sensitivity, and that is helpful. It is important to be sensitive. It is important to recognize the fragility of certain aspects of life, certain processes on the earth, certain processes within the physical body. It is, I would say, equally, if not more, important to focus on the energy of strength and resiliency. We are in a time when our physical bodies are very challenged, and I always question how much I go into this, but the recent events of past years have meant that our physical bodies have been dramatically weakened. And that you don't need to be psychic to know that that is true. And you also don't need to believe in conspiracy theories to see if that is true. It is very obvious if we look around at what is happening in our world right now. The number of children that are being diagnosed with various problems, ranging from mental, emotional disturbances to physical things, is outrageously high. And our children are meant to be our strongest amongst us, and yet they are not physically. So there is a need to really focus, and that doesn't mean get overly paranoid focused and stressed out focused. That means to grow more awareness and to give more attention to how we are strengthening our physical bodies internally as well as externally. And the same is true for our mental focus. As you mentioned, when you are cooking an egg, that is what you focus on. That is beautiful, because having the ability to focus on just one thing at a time without the feeling of stress is a skill in this world. It is imperative that we remember how to just do one thing at a time and have that one thing be the only thing on our mind while we are doing it. That is how we learn how to focus on non-physical entities, non-physical frequencies, is by being able to attune ourselves to that. And with our emotional body, we must become more resilient and take ownership for our emotional state. Someone who is authentically empowered will never make themselves or someone else a victim. They will always take responsibility for themselves and allow the responsibility to be held by the other in an emotional situation, an emotional circumstance. That does not mean through blame. That simply means through a recognition with no emotions whatsoever that the experience that is unfolding at the time is exactly what is needed for that soul and for you as a soul. So, to say that in maybe plainer words, if someone really frustrates you when you are at the grocery store because of the way they're speaking, or maybe you feel really hurt, that you feel frustrated and hurt that you have just approached this cashier and they are just grumpy, and you think to yourself, wow, here I am smiling and asking this person how they're doing, and all they're doing is giving me attitude. That is a time to take responsibility and to not take personally what is happening with that person. It is, I think it would astound most people to recognize how frequently we take things personally, even if we think, I don't take things personally. I think it would astound most people. It certainly has me, how often we take things personally unconsciously. It's an unconscious reaction. But this evolution, or revolution, we could say, of our species at this time, what we are going through in terms of our ascension, so-called, this is a time for us to consciously evolve, not unconsciously with unconscious biological reactions evolve into a new species. It is through our conscious awareness that we choose this evolution. And that is part of how we are going to actually ascend into this emergent consciousness of unity thinking, is only if we consciously are choosing to move into that. And we can only consciously choose that if we are not making ourselves a victim. And we can only not make ourselves a victim if we strengthen ourselves, physically, emotionally, and mentally. So that has been the biggest energy and continues to be really extremely present. I have tuned into a lot, but that has continued to be the biggest piece for the majority of humanity. That is really the focus right now. Strengthening.
Yeah, so that's carrying from 2025 into 2026, strengthen the body and the emotions. Got it.
And the mind.
Now, I'm curious to hear if you could just describe to somebody who might be new to the pineal gland, almost as if your guides were explaining to you, where should we focus, to try to tune into the pineal gland?
Thank you for asking this question. I'm so grateful. So we, these beautiful images of the third eye being here, that is the gateway. It is the door that leads to the pineal gland. However, you cannot get into the door from this side. It's a door that only opens in one direction, and it goes this way, from the inside out, not from the outside in. So putting our attention here, it brings our awareness to the gate. It does not do more than that, though. And so it is perhaps helpful for some and can lead people deeper. However, again, as a Capricorn, I really love efficiency. I love to do things in an organized, efficient manner. And so I want to share that the place to be the most efficient with activating this system is from the inside out. And it is really in the center back of our head. I will just say, I tell all of my students and community this, please look up an image of an anatomical brain or a video on an anatomical brain and see where the pineal gland is located. See where it's located in the anatomy of the brain. I encourage you to look at an actual brain that has been cut open. That was my first experience with the pineal gland in my anatomy class. Look at a video or an image of a real human organ brain to see where it's located, to see what it looks like, so that you are more easily able to tune into it. That if you don't know where your liver is located, you cannot tune into your liver. You just can't do it. You're swimming around blind. So you have to look at where your liver is located in order to tune into it and understand what's happening there. The same is true with the pineal gland. When we give more of our energy, which is just our awareness, to the pineal gland, that is how you start to bring more energy to that system, just like with our heart and just like with gratitude. When we give our attention to any of those things, it grows within us. The same is true with our pineal gland. And again, without going too far into one direction, the pineal gland has been very underserved and malnourished by many things in the world and things in our daily life that really impact the ability for the pineal gland to be activated and used again. Now, I want to also say that while I am a lover of the natural world and also the energetic world, in terms of people who are able to do energy healings and clearings and all of that, Reiki, working with crystals, etc., yes, those are all beautiful practices. And because they bring your attention to that part of your body, whether it's a chakra clearing or what have you, it is helpful in that regard. Is it going to be the magic thing that someone can come to you and activate your pineal gland for you? I'm telling you, the answer is no. The answer is no. You have to be the one to do it yourself. And it doesn't matter if you sit with an amethyst crystal on your third eye for 30 days. It's not going to do it for you. I just want to be really, really clear and practical. It is a physical part of your body that you have to bring your energy and attention to in order for anything to happen. Just like any other part of your physical body. It is the physical part of your body that allows you to most easily tune into the non-physical. So it happens to be located in a place that you cannot see and cannot touch. And that's part of the magic. That's part of this, what I like to talk about, this devotional discipline. That when you wake up every day and you choose to give your energy and attention to this pineal gland, you are going to start having experiences beyond your understanding and beyond what you thought was mystical before. Like it happened to me when I really started to do this work and focus on it. I thought I was having mystical experiences, and then I really started to have, way more mystical experiences. So please look at an anatomical brain and just hang out in there. Find it, touch it.
Yeah, I want to thank you for that because I almost feel embarrassed because it's like 10 years of me doing this work, and I actually thought that the pineal gland was on the front half of my face.
That's where the pituitary gland is.
Yeah,
it's a little bit back, but that's
Yeah, almost like the the heart chakra is not necessarily where the heart is. I didn't know if it was similar with the pineal gland, so it's actually exciting because now I'm going to get to tune in and see what comes up from this new place that I haven't really explored that much. That's really cool. I am curious, what type of being is Lilith?
A divine feminine emanation is really what she has described herself to me as in her words.
And so she's the one that's coming through the most lately?
No, actually not at all. She came through that time to give a message for YouTube really at the time, talking about kind of the energies that were going on, and then she has spoken to me a few times, but in between, and I can tune into her at any time. But she has not actually come back through directly to give a message since then.
Who's coming through the most lately?
The Arcturians are the most frequent and probably my most beloved. Their energy is anytime they just have incredibly beautiful heart energy. It's very joyful and it makes me kind of giggle every time because it's very strong. There's a lot of love there.
Yeah, your radiance of Arcturian energy is felt. Like the second that you said that, it was like a wave of love just blasted out of you and through the screen and to everyone. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's them. Which, just to say, particularly actually because this is relevant to how we started this conversation.
Yeah.
Again, I sometimes I share perhaps unpopular or contrary opinions, and that's okay. It's just
Cool.
It will be understood. The extraterrestrials that we connect to and the beings that are channeled, particularly those that are considered extraterrestrial in nature, such as the Arcturians, they are our future selves. That is all. And so this event that you were just holding, that you mentioned, when we are able to tune into our future self in this lifetime and become that future self by truly stepping and walking as that future self and recognizing that there is actually no future, so it is who I am right now that is also the becoming process. When we recognize that more fully just as this human and this personality, it is much easier to tune into a future self that is way beyond this personality and way beyond this human, such as the Arcturians. And so as I have come to know my future self more in this lifetime, so too have I come to know my future self outside of this lifetime, which is as an Arcturian. And it is true for many, many beings on this planet, that they will become something that they are channeling, or beings that they are listening to, that they resonate with deeply. They will actually become that being, which is why there is such a deep resonance there.
And is that through another lifetime, or is that through the evolution of humankind?
It is both, one and the same.
It's one and the same. That is fascinating. So I'm curious. You have a very unique perspective on all this stuff, and I would just love to hear your take on what is happening right now with extraterrestrials on our planet, like in contact and all that stuff. We hear all these different things happening all the time. What's going on?
That's a beautiful question. What is going on?
What's going on?
Well, so I will say that when I was very first informed about, it is paradoxical and maybe contradictory in nature, but I as a psychic, I actually try to not talk about the future so much because people are already not focused, present enough in this moment. And so getting them thinking about 2 years ahead is something I really try to avoid. However, with that being said, I will say when I was very first informed about the year 2027, it was in May when I was leading a pretty large group through Egypt. I was given a really massive download about the year 2027 and didn't know that that was a year that many people have been talking about for some time, apparently. And what I was told was that is when, quote, first contact was really going to come out in a much broader way. In a bigger way for a vast majority of humans. Now, it's interesting because when we look back in history, this has actually been discussed many times before yours and mine's time and childhood, that is for sure. But back in the 60s and 70s, the same exact thing was said. And it's important to look at the history of quote, New Age or spiritual teachings to understand that this is a lot of things are a repetition of what has been said and done and seen many times before. I am interested in the evolution of consciousness. I am interested in where we are going, which means becoming deeply present with where we are right now. So, what I have come to know is that this first contact, the reason why I put it in quotation marks, is because it is really just a recognition that we have already been living with non-human entities. And the shift in consciousness of understanding that it is not human consciousness that is the dominant consciousness, But that is what the vast majority of humanity, that's still where they are. We are. That's us. That's still where we are as a consciousness. And so it is that shift that is going to take place within our consciousness that is going to allow first contact in its own way to happen in a more peaceful sense. That is not so dramatic with ships landing, etc. And one piece that I do, I am compelled to say it, is I really want to encourage you who are listening to this to consider the tendency to crave drama in any way, to crave drama in a personal sense, which, going back to what we talked about earlier, could be making yourself a victim, to crave drama by making someone else a perpetrator and attacking you, and also to crave drama in a larger collective sense of people wanting to know and experience these supposed 3 days of darkness that have been written about and talked about sometimes, of our electric grid being wiped out and having a reset, or craving the drama of having alien ships be above our Earth. That is a craving of an ego. That is not necessarily the soul coming through you. And I always want to bring it back to that, because what we are wanting to evolve into is as a conscious, unified whole. The soul is not dramatic. The soul whispers. The soul nudges with loving hands. The soul does not scream. If the soul was screaming, then a lot more people would be awakened at this time, don't you think? And so I want to really invite the contemplation of what drama means to you. And if you are feeling like you crave drama, and perhaps how much of this channeled information you are consuming to get a fix of that. Just to be more aware of your nervous system and what is coming up within you and what is actually driving you and compelling you to participate in videos such as this one, or teachings and channelings of other people. Because we want this to be peaceful, and we are contributing to the creation of our reality. Each of us are creating this. And so that is why I'm bringing this up, so that we can create a peaceful transition and look to our Earth Mother as an example and as an inspiration. The slow moving nature of the rhythm of this planet tells us about the rhythm of our own body and what best suits this physical world to evolve peacefully, to evolve beautifully. Beauty is order, and order is magic. So when we allow ourselves to move into a more beautiful and orderly way of being, magic naturally unfolds. We do not need drama and light shows for that to happen.
Oh, that was like the best answer ever. And, you know, I caught myself in that for a while, where I was all like in the super excited about the extraterrestrials, what's happening, and, you know, trying to get the audience all excited too. But like recently, kind of like you started up, you know, just wanting to share from the deepest parts of your heart. Like that's really what I'm resonating the most with these days, and wanting to listen to people who are wanting to do that and encouraging other people to do that is where it's at right now for me. And I think for me, it's like moving out of like this spiritual, I guess, consumption of information and into more like embodiment, you know.
That is exactly it. That's a beautiful way of saying it.
Thank you. So my question is for you is, what is the healthy reframe in our perception of extraterrestrials? And like, should it be we're focusing simply that they are our future self and that we're excited about that? Like, what would be a good, I guess, frame of reference for us to embody?
Yeah, how lovely. So I want to say two things. That what you mentioned of perceiving them as our future self, absolutely, is really a beautiful thing to do, because then there is not this separation of this feeling of they're in a higher frequency than me, they are out of touch and out of reach, therefore they know far more than I do, and I need to look to them to receive answers, or look to those who can contact them to receive answers. So perceiving them as your future self brings the awareness and attention back to you in a way that is empowering, and it gives a different lens to which to perceive the information that you're listening to, and to understand, why am I called to listening to this? Perhaps if this is my future self, if I just play a little experiment, if that is my future self, what are the qualities and the values and the virtues that this future self is expressing that I feel inspired by? That really should be the frame of reference and the lens through which you are perceiving, listening, reading, learning, and experiencing about this channel information from extraterrestrials. The other piece that maybe is more abstract is to consider, how is your relationship empowering you? How is your relationship to extraterrestrials empowering you? Humans, we all have a tendency to externalize power. That is part of the reason why we are, that's what we are evolving out of, I will say. That's what we are evolving beyond. So the gift and the practices of self-empowerment are what I love the most. And that involves alchemical transmutation, so that you can release these lower parts to become more empowered. Absolutely, it does include that. And if we feed the lower self, then we are going to make that lower self stronger. Just like how we can work out different parts of our physical body to make it stronger, we can also work out, focus on different parts of our personality, different parts of our lower self, and make it stronger as well. So, if we have a part of us that is disempowered, that wants to externalize power, and we start feeding that part by listening to copious amounts of channeled information to learn how we should plan our next month and the next few years of our lives, that is very disempowering. That is giving power away to this other person who happens to be behind a camera. Following on YouTube is not grounds for proper leadership. And I recognize that that is exactly the seat that I am sitting in, but it's still true. It's still a fact. And someone who is able to tune into channeled information, or even those who are able to read the stars so accurately in astrology, it does not give immediate authority to that person to tell you how to be planning your life. That is for you. And so, getting in touch with the heart and empowering the self to know where one wants to go, that is what allows someone to also receive and listen to channeled information, but not be giving power away to these extraterrestrial beings, because that is not what they want either. If that is a true frequency of an extraterrestrial who is here for our upliftment, they want us to be empowered. They do not want us to give our power away. They do not want us to be worshiping them in some sense. That's not part of the relationship. So if recognizing them as your future self is what supports you to be able to doing that, then please do. That's what I would say.
I love that so much. And it's funny that you brought up the heart, because Leah and I just shifted our whole model, and we're actually launching it in January, where in January we're just going to have a platform where every Monday through Friday at some point through the day, I'm going to come on Zoom and just either play a heart coherence meditation or guide one myself, but just get people to embody the heart energy. And that's like my new mission, is just to help people sit in that space themselves and see what unfolds from that. And I'm really excited about that. So that was kind of what I've been given by my guides, is it's time to just do that. So I'm excited about that. And I do want to really honor the intention that you said at the beginning of this podcast, that you want to just share from the deepest parts of your heart. I'm wondering, is there anything else from the deepest parts of your heart that you want to bring up?
Yes, there is, I guess, a final piece. That is to say that it is part of tuning into the non-physical realm, and part of tuning into the realm of our Earth Mother in terms of the nature around us means that we are tuning into the subtle. The subtle being that which you cannot experience with the physical senses, and you cannot quite put your finger on it, no matter how eloquent of a communicator you are, and no matter how deep of a speaker you are. It is so rare to touch and express the subtle accurately, because the subtle, by definition, is constantly shifting. It is like a diaphanous cloth in the breeze, a vapor that moves and shifts, that speaks and reflects truth. But truth can never be pinned down, because real truth, truth with a capital T, is God. It is the Creator. And you cannot pin God down. God is a paradox. The Creator is everything and nothing at the same time. And so if we are going to tune into our hearts, we must also tune into the subtle and be more aware of the softness. How can we soften while also strengthen at the same time, and live as that paradox that our Creator is? That is one way that I consider and contemplate my day when I am setting an intention when I wake up. How can I embody a paradox of the Creator today? What does it mean to hold all of that together? Because, of course, every opposite contains its opposite. That's what makes it whole. And so what opposites can I hold and embody in this day? And that is a beautiful way to, I would say, close out and also enter into this new year. What are the opposites that you are both wanting to let go of, but also move into at the same time? Because it is in the release that you move into something new.
I love that so much. And I know you had mentioned in our email that you were interested in channeling. If you feel complete, I'm complete. But if you have a message that you want to channel through, that's fine. But this has been amazing.
I will ask. Is this enough? This is enough.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling too. So beautiful. Is there any way that we can support you, the Heart Coherence Collaborative, or get in touch with your work?
It's a beautiful question. As I mentioned, I am on YouTube. If you'd like to see more of me, Aluna Noel is my full name on YouTube, and I am also, of course, on I myself am not really on Instagram, but it is me. It's the information from me coming through, and then I have a website and a beautiful community. I hold live events every month. Throughout the month, I teach live courses and hold meditations and Q&As that you're able to see. It's called The Circle. It is a place where I have created with my team a really beautiful private social media platform, so that people are able to communicate and teach each other, because that is our consciousness that we are coming into, is one unified circle, a whole. It is not simply that there is one person, a sage on the stage, as I say. That is not the model that we are working with anymore. It is that we are sitting in circle and empowering each other to remember ourselves as the sovereign leaders and creators that we are. So that is the intention behind my community, and that is what we do every month and throughout the time when I'm not online, also in this social media. So you're welcome to look at that. That's at alunanoel.com. You can find out more there. And thank you very much for
I'll
your
share
time.
the links below. Thank you so much. This was an honor to get to meet you. I really enjoyed this.
You as well. Thank you so much. And thank you to all who are listening. I appreciate you.
Bye, everybody. We love you.